This is the Brave Ideas Podcast, brought to you by Aqua. Welcome to episode 16 of the Brave Ideas Podcast, the show that is all about bringing to light fresh perspectives from the worlds of digital and marketing. I'm Dan Herman. I'm a digital strategist, a praise singer, and a social democrat. And I'm here today with my co-host.
I'm Esther, Head of Conversation Analytics here at Aqua, also a semi-professional dancer and class clown. We'd love to hear your opinion about the show. Please email us at braveideas@aquaonline.com or follow us on social media at Aqua Agency on Facebook, Twitter and LinkedIn, or Brave Ideas Podcast on Instagram.
Today we're talking to Adrian Holmes, front-end web developer at Aqua. Adrian is a musician who is brilliant at mind games, specifically when it comes to table tennis. And today, he's going to talk to us about storytelling. Adrian, what's new?
How's it going? I'm actually going to be talking about interactive storytelling, but I'll start off with what storytelling is. Storytelling is a means of educating, entertaining, preserving culture, instilling morals, and another thing about stories is it's memorable. You retain the information when it's a story. You connect on an emotional level.
I think storytelling is maybe not new to marketing. We've been using storytelling for a long time. As we know, storytelling is what gets brands and gets ideas to stick in people's minds. We remember stories far better than we do any other type of messaging. And for that reason, should be used even in what we're doing in analytics today when we're presenting insights to clients. We need to be telling stories so that they really understand and get what to do next. Interactive storytelling, I'm not as versed on. What would that be about?
Interactive storytelling is where the user is a part of the story. They need to interact for the story to unfold, for it to continue. So they're a part of the story. Another thing is they can absorb the story and the information at their own pace. You know, they can absorb the scene or this concept before moving on. So that's the thing about interactive storytelling.
So what separates interactive storytelling from normal storytelling is that with technology, we can now immerse consumers in co-creating those stories with us. Yes. And creating immersive experiences that break the norm of what they normally conventionally experience. So it gives us a new way of telling stories. So in the same way that that film was a new way of taking books and telling stories. Now the digital world and digital platforms are enabling that storytelling. So it would be really interesting for us to hear what sort of examples of interactive storytelling you can share with us.
Okay, there's a simple one, which is the Porsche Evolution.com website, if you guys go have a look. What you'll notice is while you're scrolling, it doesn't just scroll vertically like you would assume, but what you see is the earliest model of the Porsche centered in the screen, and as you scroll it transitions into the newer version. So while you're scrolling, you get to see the story, the history of the Porsche, and that's a very simple way of interacting, the user scrolling at their own pace. The whole time you're hearing Daft Punk, Get Lucky, but every time you scroll to a different era, you hear a different version. It changes tone to match the era of that year.
That's really awesome. I mean, I'm going to definitely go check that website out. I think that what's really interesting about that, and just tying it back to like it being used for marketing, because of course it is a Porsche website. It's a really great way of telling a story about the history of a brand and utilizing mixed media and web in order to convey that message. I don't know, what do you think about that, Esther?
Well, I really want to understand, because for me, that's still kind of one-dimensional. So we interacting with it on a level that we're seeing the different changes. So we're understanding the value of the vehicle from era to era, and we're hearing the different changes in terms of music. So we're reminded in a nostalgic way. But in terms of interactive, surely there are examples where people are able to get more involved with the actual scene that's happening around them.
Yes, there are more immersive interactive experiences. Something I'm seeing come up a lot is interactive music videos. So you would be immersed in a 3D rendered world, and you'd probably see videos, but you would be able to move freely, look around, and interact with the actual music video, so you're a part of it.
So I know Arcade Fire loved doing that. I think they had, The Neighborhoods, which was a Google project. So for the album The Neighborhoods, they created a video as well, and that was a really immersive experience. Another band that are also good at that are OK Go. They also create these sort of immersive web videos, interactive music videos. And also I think Pharrell had it for Happy, which was like a 24-hour clock that sort of was an interactive media experience that they could connect with and relate to. So that's really interesting. Do you have any other cool examples to share?
There's a fitness app. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Zombie Run. This is an example of interaction, not web-based, but in the real world. So this is for someone who wants to go for a jog, works for cycling. And what happens is you get to experience a zombie apocalypse. While you're going for a run, you put on your earphones, you're listening to a fictitious radio station, and while you're jogging, it starts playing music from your own playlist, which is quite cool. So it's like your music is playing on this radio station. And as time goes by, you start hearing warnings of a zombie apocalypse. Then eventually you start hearing chaos, and then it reaches a point where you hear zombies chasing you. So this is very motivational for the jogger to keep the distance from the zombies. You got to run fast enough and long enough to outrun the zombies, and you have little missions to make sure you get to the next point.
Sounds like a total freaking nightmare. Like,
I think as a runner, I think that's the
freaked
best thing ever. Like, it's really,
I think
really
runners just want
motivating.
that kind of motivation. They like they need something, and that's the way that works for them. They've got 2 million users, so it's like they've got a lot.
Yeah,
of
everyone
people.
wants to run from zombies. I don't blame them.
But everyone wants a reason to run.
Yeah, they want to keep fit, and this is the way.
Wow, that's really interesting. I think what's really nice about that, it's how storytelling can be sort of infused with the real world in order to create almost like a transmedia, online, offline experience that's really exciting. And I mean, I've seen also, like, just to that point, I've seen such cool case studies where there's I know that there's a new Pokemon app where you can almost play with the Pokemon in the real world via your mobile phone. So there's really cool opportunities in terms of how people are bridging an online, offline world and using interactive and digital platforms in order to do that effectively. So Adrian, I think that these case studies are really good examples, but I'm quite alarmed that we're not seeing too much of that in terms of our output as an advertising agency, in terms of how we are creating these deep, resonant, co-created stories that enable users to immerse themselves in marketing through storytelling. And I'd just like to understand from your perspective as to why you think that isn't happening.
From my point of view, developers not being a part of the creative process. We understand the technical aspects, but it doesn't mean we can't be creative. It doesn't mean we can't contribute. Another thing is ideas have certain technical challenges. We can say whether or not we can do it, or we can suggest alternatives, keeping the objective in mind. So I just think developers should be a part of the creative process. That's my personal view on it.
But how do you do that? I mean, and maybe Esther, you can give some thoughts on this, but we have a very traditional creative structure. We have executive creative director, the creative directors, they've got teams of art directors and copywriters. The art director designs, the copywriter writes, and they come up with the concept and then hand that to the developers. So potentially what you're saying is that development needs to be involved up front and included within the process. What do you think, Ez?
Well, I think also it's about collaboration throughout that process, as you're saying, but it's also about understanding the role that development has to play in terms of being the enabler. So, for instance, a lot of what we'd like to do creatively needs to have that technical backing and needs to have the enablers to put that forward.
Yes, we would take those ideas, we'd make them happen, we'd make them function, we'd add the effects. But I think sometimes what happens is there isn't trust. There could be a scenario where a developer would come back because they weren't part of the creative process. A project would be given to him and he would say, but you know what, this isn't actually possible based on what you provided. Because they weren't part of the process, they weren't able to bring it forth in the first place. So this might affect the trust in a developer. It's like, okay, well, they can't do this. But we'd have alternatives. If we're part of that, we can bring this forth and we can talk about what can be done to save a lot of headaches at a later stage.
But I think that's precisely the problem. I totally agree with you. The way that it currently works in terms of creative coming up with concept, then going, cool, we're speaking to dev, and dev will tell us whether we can or can't do this. It's a flawed approach. Because actually, the concept should be informed by tech principles and dev principles if we are going to create these sorts of narratives. I think that another potential problem could be the fact that our clients don't see digital that way yet, which means that the way that the briefs are coming into the system or the way that projects and campaigns are getting rolled out is still in this conventional, here's a banner, here's a social post, drive to your website, using the existing channels and not thinking above and beyond what could be possible. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a really challenging situation. I don't know, how do we get around this? What do you think, Esther?
I think, first of all, it's changing our perception of the guys in the development team. No, they're not just techie nerds. They actually have great creative solutions to problems. Generally, for me, in terms of the whole agency picture, is that thing of getting more collaborative and getting in the door at the start of the project, like we were saying earlier.
So, Adrian, I think this has been a really great conversation, and I'd just like to hear from you. What would your one takeout be for Aqua as well as the broader industry?
Apart from seeing developers as creatives, what I would like for people to take from this is to actually learn about the people you work with. Learn about their challenges, learn about their interests, because the more you know about them, the better collaboration is.
So, Adrian, if people want to find out more about this topic and maybe about you, where can they do that?
Yeah, he's a developer. We don't need to find out more about him. I'm joking, just teasing.
Oh, it's played straight into the stereotype. But where can we find out about you, Adrian?
You guys can just email me at adrianh@aquaonline.com.
Thanks, Adrian. I'm now going to hand over to Esther for the Trending Innovation, which is a brand new segment where we look at a trend that is taking the digital marketing world by storm. Esther, what do you have for us today?
Dan, I've been looking at Google's image recognition that they've developed. Image recognition is not necessarily a new thing. Retailers have been using, for instance, facial recognition for a very long time. Facebook is able to recognize your face, which is super creepy. But now we're actually able to recognize objects as well. So how we would use this in terms of marketing is the same way you would use conversation analytics keywords. Now we're able to track an object that has, for instance, a label with wording on it. It should be around this size or this color. Coca-Cola, for example, might want to track the amount of times people are drinking their product or have their product in imagery. So we can start actually developing some analytics around how many people are purchasing product. But like all unstructured data, it's still going to require a certain amount of monitoring and a certain amount of vetting. Because, for example, a Coca-Cola could look a lot like your ginger cat with special markings.
Thanks for that, Esther, and thank you for listening to the Brave Ideas podcast. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe on iTunes, and while you're there, give us a rating and a review. You can also visit aquagrp.libsyn.com for the complete library of episodes. If you want to keep in touch with me, Dan, you can follow me at elhermo, ELHERMO on Twitter, and elhermo23 on Snapchat and Instagram. And you can follow Esther.
Simply Esther Mcgeer on Instagram.
Special thank you to Adrian Holmes, our special guest. Thanks to Matthew Klawansky for music and production. Thanks to Eros Ghoos and his team for the art direction. And thank you to the Aqua social team for managing our social media platforms.
That brings us to the end of the show. We'll leave you with one final thought. You're only given a little spark of madness. You mustn't lose it.